Once upon a time in a country that just couldn't catch a break, Ross, fresh off being elected president, found himself drowning in praise. The nation cheered his every word as he took the stage, reminding everyone that they'd just survived one of the wildest elections in history. He even brought up the chaos of half the world vanishing and that massive, mysterious celestial thing popping up in the ocean, insisting that sticking together was the only way forward. But while the crowds roared, his own daughter, Betty, refused to forgive him for his past mistakes, a grudge that wouldn't let go no matter how many calls his team made. Meanwhile, in another corner of this topsy-turvy world, Sam Wilson was glued to the broadcast, watching every twist and turn. During a press conference, Ross let slip that his relentless hunt for the Hulk had defined his career and had cost him dearly with Betty. It was a bitter reminder that even a president can have a murky past. Fast forward 5 months, and the scene shifts to a covert mission that felt like it was straight out of a spy movie. In a dusty back alley meeting spot, Waka Mexico W. Torres teamed up with none other than Captain America, Sam Wilson himself, to stop the theft of a mysterious container. Orders were crystal clear. No one was to know what secrets lay inside that package. In true action movie style, Captain America burst into the scene, taking on the guards like it was just another day at the office, all to keep that container safe. But just when things seemed under control, trouble slithered in. Enter the Serpent Leader, a villain dripping with arrogance, who swaggered onto the scene, threatening to kill a priest and a gaggle of praying priestesses. With a sneer, he told the priest he wasn't there for prayers but for answers about the buyer's whereabouts. When the priest stood his ground, chaos erupted, and orders flew to wipe everyone out. Amid the turmoil, Captain America didn't miss a beat. With a cocky smirk, he confronted the Serpent Leader, warning him that his buyer had ghosted him, while Sam Wilson swept aside enemy soldiers like they were nothing. Quick on his feet, Torres recovered the package, sealing the mission's success, even as one of the villain's men stepped up for a fight that ended all too quickly in favor of our heroes. Back in a quieter moment, President Ross found himself at the grave of Karen Lee, keeping a promise he'd made to Betty, even though their relationship was as broken as old carnival mirrors. His assistant Layla asked if he'd reached out to her, but Ross admitted he hadn't. Even though he'd changed, trust was a hard ticket to sell, especially with his first 100 days on the line and a crucial treaty hanging in the balance. While the nation and its leaders played high-stakes chess, Captain America began piecing together another twist. The mysterious buyer had planned to double-cross the Serpent Leader, shelling out $50 million to secretly reroute the container to Japan for a later pickup. With the stakes higher than ever, Sam met up with Torres again, this time for advice on how to live up to the Falcon legacy. In an unexpected twist, Sam took him to meet Isaiah Bradley, a true hero who proved that you didn't need any fancy super soldier serum to make a difference. During training, a call from President Ross interrupted Sam, and Isaiah couldn't help but give him a withering look when he returned. Isaiah wasn't shy about calling out the president's shady past, but Sam insisted he wasn't blindly following orders. Staying close to the White House meant keeping an eye on Ross and protecting the people if things ever went sideways. After that eye-opening chat, Sam mentioned he'd been invited to the White House to be honored for recovering the container, a neat little thank you that came with an invitation for Torres, too. Encouraging him to don his own suit and step up, Sam made it clear it would be an honor to have him along. After a bit of hesitation, even Isaiah warmed up to the idea. That night, the trio, Sam, Torres, and Isaiah, strolled through the hallowed halls of the White House. Isaiah couldn't help but quip about how strange it felt to be inside the Beast's house, and before long, they snapped a goofy selfie, completely unaware that every moment was being captured by watchful security cameras. Not long after, Sam was summoned into President Ross's office. Ross thanked him for retrieving the container, insisting it would clinch a crucial treaty he'd been pushing for. Then, out of nowhere, Ross dropped a bombshell. He wanted Captain America to help rebuild the Avengers. Sam didn't even flinch. He reminded Ross that it was his own actions that had torn the team apart in the first place, and putting them back together wouldn't be a cakewalk. But Ross was adamant, arguing that the Avengers were the nation's backbone. Without them, half the country might not have survived the recent crises. He left Sam with a final thought, hinting that working together might be the only way to secure the future. Before Sam could leave, Ross even introduced him to Japan's Prime Minister for a quick photo op, leaving our hero with a lot to mull over as the night wound down with the president giving a stirring speech to the country's most influential figures. With a heavy tone, President Ross announced that a celestial mass had risen from the ocean and that, after decisive action, they'd made the most important discovery of modern times. He explained that they'd found a material even tougher than vibranium, adamantium, and revealed that a piece of this valuable metal had been hidden in the recovered container. Thanks to a daring mission led by two exceptional men, Walken Torres and Captain America Sam Wilson, they now had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The future of the international community, he said, depended on what they did with this discovery. If nations could come together, adamantium might be shared fairly, with benefits for everyone. Just as Ross was laying out his grand vision, gunfire erupted, throwing the event into chaos. Out of nowhere, Isaiah Bradley opened fire, and in an instant, guests and officials scattered while security scrambled to regain control. Without hesitation, Sam and his partner set off in pursuit of Isaiah, chased closely by a police squad until they finally cornered him. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Sam pleaded with Isaiah not to run, warning that any further escape would only make things worse, and begged him to surrender peacefully. Determined to fight for his friend, Sam headed straight to President Ross. He found the president in a room packed with agents, but Ross's focus quickly shifted to the unfolding crisis. Seeing Sam's determination, Ross brushed aside the agents, except for his security advisor, Ruth, while Sam insisted that Isaiah couldn't have acted alone. He suggested that someone might have manipulated him, but Ross, as cold as ever, replied that maybe Isaiah had acted on his own and that Sam needed to stop being blind just because they were friends. Ruth added that Isaiah wasn't the only one firing shots. Both the Secret Service and the military had opened fire, pointing to what looked like a perfectly coordinated terrorist attack. Sam pushed back, arguing that Isaiah didn't even know where he was when he was arrested. He asked Ross to let him help with the investigation, but in a detached tone, the president said he'd already sacrificed too much for the country and wasn't about to risk anything more. Then Ruth dropped an uncomfortable truth. Ross had kept Isaiah locked up for years, subjected him to inhumane experiments, and treated him like a lab rat. Still, Sam refused to believe his friend was guilty. Determined, he told Ross he would work together to find the truth. But Ross shut him down harshly, making it clear that any offer expired the moment Isaiah tried to kill him. Ross added that Sam shouldn't even be involved because he wasn't Steve Rogers. And with that, he gave Ruth full authority over the investigation before dismissing Sam with a cold, condescending remark that stung more than any accusation. Not willing to let things end there, Sam went to see Isaiah Bradley, determined to learn what really happened. Isaiah swore he'd never do something like that and couldn't understand his own actions that night. With a tense look, he explained that his day had been perfectly normal. He'd stopped by the barber shop, picked up his suit, and then went to the White House. But from the start, he'd had a bad feeling and hesitated before going in. He remembered every detail. They even snapped a selfie when they arrived. But then something strange happened. His phone just stopped working. Next thing he knew, he was sitting in a park with no memory of how he got there. Sam listened carefully, reassuring him that he believed in his innocence and that they'd find the truth. Yet, a resigned Isaiah admitted that, guilty or not, there was no way out this time. He was convinced he'd end up locked away forever. If Sam truly wanted to help, Isaiah said, the only option was to walk away. Meanwhile, Ruth was busy interrogating the agent who had allowed Sam to speak with Isaiah. At the same time, Sam and his partner began piecing things together. They realized that Isaiah had likely been manipulated through some kind of auditory control, maybe hidden signals in the music, similar to what had happened with the snipers who fired at the White House. Ruth reached the same conclusion after reviewing some classified reports. Later, Sam laid out a troubling theory to his partner. Someone had wanted them at the White House that night. Why hire the serpent leader if the buyer was never going to show up? Was the whole thing a setup to lure them in? Everything pointed to the buyer watching them from the very beginning. Intrigued and on edge, Sam ordered his partner to dig deeper into Ruth's findings. But just as he finished the call, a sudden attack cut his thoughts short. Bullets flew straight at him, and the shooter, Gustavo Fring, moving with lethal precision, fired, convinced he'd just finished the job. In a flash, Fring grabs Sam's phone and reports that the target has been eliminated. Confident in his success, he prepares to send proof of the kill. What he didn't expect is that Captain America is always one step ahead. In a split second, Sam charges at him. Fring is surprised, but Sam stays cool and even smirks, noting that his buyer had predicted this move. If Cap survived the grenade, there was a 75% chance he'd try to talk first. As always, he was right. Without missing a beat, Fring bounces back and lands a punch on Sam, setting off a high-speed chase. With every attack, Fring mocks him, claiming that without his gear, Sam's helpless. But he underestimates Cap's instincts. In one sharp move, Sam blindsides him with a brutal hit that leaves Fring badly injured. Before taking his last breath, Fring chuckles bitterly and warns with a weak voice that although Sam did a good job taking him down, he's not going to like what comes next. Meanwhile, in a very different setting, President Ross is meeting with world leaders to finalize the adamantium treaty. With a solemn tone, he declares that a celestial mass has emerged from the ocean, and that after decisive action, they've made the most significant discovery of the modern era, a material even stronger than vibranium, called adamantium. He reveals that the recovered container held a piece of this precious metal, and that thanks to the successful mission carried out by two exceptional men, Walken Torres and Captain America Sam Wilson, they now have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The future of the international community depends on what they do with this discovery. If nations agree to work together, adamantium could be shared fairly for everyone. But the room quickly grows tense when the leaders question how they can trust Ross's leadership when he doesn't even have control over his own country. The atmosphere chills even more when someone points out that Japan's prime minister, a key player in the deal, is missing. That absence speaks volumes, and soon the international leaders decide to put negotiations on hold, warning Ross that if he doesn't regain Japan's trust, they'll move forward without him. The pressure mounts, and the stability of his administration hangs by a thread. Back on the ground, Wen fills Sam in on what he's discovered about Ruth. Born in Israel and trained in the infamous Red Room, Ruth is no ordinary operative. She's a black widow, and Wen warns Sam not to underestimate her or get in her way. Later, while reviewing the footage from that chaotic night, they uncover something strange. Isaiah had President Ross in his sights, but, for some reason, chose not to take the shot. That red flag grows even higher with the possible involvement of Samuel Stearns. Meanwhile, Keen digs into the databases and traces Stearns' last call to a location called Camp Echo 1. With this new lead, Sam tells him to get ready. This time, they're going in together. Elsewhere, Ruth heads to Isaiah's location to meet an agent. But when she arrives, she witnesses something disturbing. The very same agent who let Sam in has systematically taken out all the snipers in the area, and then, without hesitation, he turns his gun on himself. His radio plays an eerie tune on repeat. Seeing this, Ruth makes an immediate decision. She's moving Isaiah to a secure location on the other side of the world. At the same time, President Ross is en route to Japan when he's informed that Sam and Wen have left their base. Wasting no time, he orders them to be intercepted at any cost. Meanwhile, Koopa, the warden from Isaiah's old prison, tries to contact the president, but the call takes a chilling turn. A gunshot rings out, and then, over the line, a voice Ross knows all too well cuts through: Samuel Stearns. With his usual calculating tone, Stearns reminds Ross of a melody that should be all too familiar, and then coldly accuses him of leaving Stearns to rot in prison. Now, Stearns claims he's the one making the decisions, promising that what comes next will be even worse. By the time it's over, the whole world, especially Ross's daughter Betty, will hate him. Alarmed by these revelations, Ross immediately contacts Ruth, who is still busy transferring Isaiah, and orders her to drop the mission and head to Camp Echo 1 instead. Things have escalated dangerously. Meanwhile, Sam and Wen arrive at the camp, navigating through layers of traps. When they finally get inside, they're met with eerie silence. There are no prisoners, only a haunting sense of abandonment. As they push forward, they uncover something even more unsettling: a hidden lab, a research facility operating inside what was supposed to be a prison. It's not just unusual, it's deeply suspicious. Digging through records, they confirm that Isaiah was once held there, and that discovery only raises more questions. Back in Japan, Ross finally meets with the Prime Minister. Ross pushes the idea that sharing adamantium with the world is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But the Prime Minister isn't convinced. He's received troubling intel suggesting that Ross's real plan was to steal the metal from the container. Ross forces a tense smile and tries to dismiss the accusation, arguing that if he really wanted the adamantium for himself, he would never have sent Captain America to retrieve it. But the Prime Minister stands firm, telling Ross in a clear tone that Japan won't be part of his treaty, and that if Ross is thinking about taking matters into his own hands, he'd better tread carefully. While searching through the lab, Sam comes across an unsettling note. 3 pills a day, do not exceed the dosage. Something about it just doesn't sit right. Meanwhile, Walken continues digging into the music used for mind control and discovers that the song Mr. Blue contains a hidden frequency designed to manipulate anyone who hears it. With quick thinking, he alters the signal and neutralizes its effects. Then, out of the shadows, the mystery buyer finally steps forward. Samuel Stearns. Without hesitation, he admits that he hired the Serpent Leader to steal the container, but his real objective was to kill Ross. His voice, heavy with resentment, recounts his bitter story. According to Stearns, Ross had thrown him in prison without trial, and after a gamma radiation accident permanently altered his brain, the government secretly used him for 16 years. Ruthless as ever, Ross exploited Stearns' intelligence to climb to the presidency, feeding him the same empty promise that once in power, he'd set him free. But as always, Ross lied, abandoning him without a second thought. Sam tries to reason with Stearns, explaining that his actions are dragging Isaiah deeper into this mess, and that if he keeps on this path, more innocent lives will be at stake. But Stearns won't budge. In his mind, Ross is beyond redemption, and stopping now would be a real mistake. Without warning, Stearns uses his mind control to turn a squad of soldiers against Sam and Wen before calmly making his exit. Sam and Wen fight with skill, taking down soldier after soldier, but the wave of enemies just keeps coming. That's when Ruth crashes onto the scene. She hadn't wanted to get involved, but now she has no choice. Moving like a precision weapon, she cuts through the attackers with lethal efficiency, proving once again that she's a Black Widow. With the immediate threat neutralized, the trio retreats quickly. Ruth suggests that if Stearns escaped recently, he couldn't have gotten far. They need to set up a perimeter and track him down. But before they can act, soldiers guarding the perimeter surround them and arrest them on direct orders from President Ross. Sam and Wen already know what's coming. The moment the soldiers hear that eerie music, their demeanor shifts instantly. Stearns has taken control. Taking advantage of the distraction, Ruth frees them, and together they escape before the situation spirals even further out of control. Meanwhile, in Japan, Ross makes a drastic decision. If he can't convince the leaders to share the adamantium, he'll take it by force. His agent Taylor warns him that invading Japan would trigger a war like nothing they've ever seen, but Ross isn't listening. His mind is already set on his own terms back in the States. With no other options left, Sam, Walken, and Ruth turn to an unlikely ally, the Serpent Leader. After tracking him down, Sam asks to speak with him alone. In a firm voice, he reminds the Serpent Leader that the last time they met, he promised to find the man who wasted his time, and that man turned out to be Samuel Stearns. Intrigued, the Serpent Leader agrees to talk, but only on one condition: total unity. With no other choice, Sam agrees to hear him out. And that's when the truth finally comes to light. The Serpent Leader reveals that his old unit found Stearns years ago, and seeing his condition, prescribed him a specific dosage of medication to keep his mind stable. But Ross deliberately increased the dosage to keep Stearns under his thumb, using him as a tool for his rise to power. Stearns, like everyone else, was fed the same lie, that once Ross became president, he'd set him free. But as always, Ross lied. That's not all. Ross even funded the Serpent Leader through a secret bribe fund. Now, out for revenge, Stearns has been playing the long game, setting everything in motion with one goal in mind: forcing Ross to start a war and ensuring his total downfall. The most alarming piece of it all is that Stearns has developed technology that lets him control anyone. With that revelation, Sam knows he can't waste another second. It's time to head straight for the White House and confront President Ross. Inside the White House, Ross is hit with a direct question. Has he been feeling different lately? The truth is unsettling. Records show that Stearns is controlling him. Ross eventually comes clean. His health was in critical condition. His heart was failing, and no doctor could figure out why, until Stearns discovered the cause and provided a solution. A set of pills was keeping Ross alive, and in exchange, he granted Stearns access to the lab at Camp Echo 1. Ross couldn't risk losing his only hope of survival, but there's more. After the devastation caused by the Hulk incident, someone had to take the fall, and Stearns became collateral damage. And despite everything Ross has done for the country, the one person who matters most, his daughter Betty, has never forgiven him. That's why he held on, trying to prove he could still be a good man. The conversation is abruptly cut short by an urgent report. 2 agents, brainwashed by Stearns' music, have opened fire on the Japanese fleet. Although Keene managed to disable the signal, the damage was done. In crisis mode, Ross orders Sam and Wen to defend the Japanese forces and stop them from retaliating with military action. Desperate to contain the situation, Ross contacts the Japanese Prime Minister, insisting the troops are under mind control, but without revealing who's really behind it. The Prime Minister doesn't trust him and ignores his plea. Meanwhile, Stearns tightens his grip on Ross's mind. In his calculated tone, he whispers that the pills are finally showing progress. But there's something deeper at play. The anger and resentment Ross tried to bury are still burning inside him, eating him away. Ross doesn't really need the pills. He just needs to embrace who he truly is. But deep down, both he and Stearns know the truth. Ross will never stop taking them, and that's the price of his resistance. Out on the battlefield, Sam and Wen fight fiercely to stop the mind-controlled soldiers. But at the worst possible moment, a missile is fired. Sam reacts instantly. Though luck isn't on their side, Keen takes the hit and falls into the ocean. From their base, they receive word that a rescue team is being deployed to find him. Knowing he can't afford to pause, Sam pushes forward, managing to prevent the conflict from exploding into a full-scale war. In the end, the Japanese Prime Minister is told that Captain America saved his life, averting an international disaster. Days later, Sam visits Wen in the hospital, where Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, is also present. With a serious tone, Bucky steps forward to offer support, telling Sam not to blame himself and assuring him that everything will be okay. Then the inevitable subject comes up: Steve Rogers. Sam admits that everything feels like it's falling apart. Keen is injured, Isaiah remains locked up, and even though he had Stearns in his grasp, the man slipped away. Maybe Steve made a mistake handing over the shield, but Bucky doesn't see it that way. With conviction, he reminds Sam that Steve gave him the shield because he believed Sam was the only one truly worthy of being Captain America. Even with the serum, Steve couldn't always save the people he loved most. The burden was never easy, but that didn't mean it wasn't worth carrying. With those words, Bucky heads out. He's got a flight to catch. Meanwhile, the pills Stearns gave Ross contained gamma radiation, which Ross's body absorbs at an alarming rate, meaning he constantly needs more just to survive. Ross reaches out to a captain, but before the deal can go through, Stearns takes matters into his own hands, using his advanced technology to trigger a cardiac arrest that kills the man instantly. Later, Ross finally gets through to his daughter Betty. This time, she picks up and apologizes for not calling after the White House attack, hoping to rebuild what's left of their relationship. Ross invites her out, just like they used to, and Betty agrees, giving Ross a rare moment of happiness. Afterwards, Ross addresses the public, reminding them that when he took office, he promised to secure absolute peace. Now, he claims, he's about to fulfill that promise as the treaty that will seal that commitment is finally being signed. Meanwhile, Stearns meets with Sam to discuss a delicate matter. He asks Sam to guide a man consumed by bitterness, a man standing at the edge of the abyss. During their talk, Stearns mentions that Sam ruined his plan in the ocean, but he still has one last move. He controls Ross through the pills. Sam counters, saying someone is already working on the situation, but Stearns shakes his head and warns that Ross, twisted by his own ambition, is about to do the same thing to someone else. During Ross's speech, the press bombs him with questions about the conflict with Japan, visibly rattling him. Then breaking news comes in. Stearns has been captured, but before he's taken away, he leaves a chilling message. Now the world will see who Ross truly is. The pressure and years of bottled-up rage finally explode in a violent outburst. Ross begins to transform into a towering, crimson-skinned beast. Catching his own reflection, he barely recognizes himself as his fury takes over completely, unleashing unstoppable destruction. Captain America steps in and leads Ross to the place where he used to meet with Betty, hoping it might bring him back to his senses. He tries to reason with him, urging him to stop and face Stearns, but the Ross they knew is gone. All that remains is raw, uncontrollable rage, and the only option is to fight. The battle is brutal. In his monstrous new form, Ross is an unstoppable force, his raw power overwhelming. In the chaos, he even manages to rip Captain America's suit apart, and then an explosion rocks the scene. Neither of them goes down as reinforcements arrive. Sam takes one last shot at reaching what's left of Ross's humanity. He reminds Ross that, unlike so many others, he never took the super soldier serum out of fear, but because he wanted to be better on his own terms. He tells Ross it's time for someone to see him for who he really is, especially Betty. Slowly, Sam's words break through. and little by little, Ross regains his human form. Later, Sam is informed that Stearns is being transferred to a more secure facility. Before heading to the hospital, he stops by to visit his old friend Isaiah. Meanwhile, news outlets confirm that the treaty has been signed, a major step toward restoring order to the nation. At the White House, now a prisoner, Ross receives a visit from Sam. Sam acknowledges that despite everything, Ross deserves respect for owning up to his actions and stepping down from office, and he informs him that Japan has accepted the treaty. Ross, as blunt as ever, asks why Sam is even there, and Sam calmly replies that if they couldn't see the good in people, neither of them would be here. Sam says he'd stay longer, but there's something else he needs to do. Betty has decided to visit Ross. With regret in his voice, Ross apologizes, saying the outing they had planned won't be happening anymore. Elsewhere, Wen has recovered, though his spirits remain low. He jokes that, unlike Sam, he's never been knocked out of the sky and dropped into the Indian Ocean like he's untouchable. Sam tells him it's not about being perfect. It's about not failing the people who believe in you. The pressure is crushing, and doubts linger about whether one's best will ever be enough. Still, Wen is proud of his friend. Once he only saw heroes on TV, now he stands beside one he truly admires. Sam tells him to stay ready and keep his suit prepared because despite everything, Ross was right about one thing. The world needs the Avengers. The movie ends, but then, in a post-credit scene, we see Sam visiting Stearns in his cell. Stearns smirks as he tells Sam that he's seen it in the probabilities. Every so-called hero who thinks they're protecting the world is living in an illusion. Do they really think they're the only ones? That this is the only world? He warns. Soon they'll find out that protecting it isn't just about fighting enemies, it's about guarding against everything else too. And that's how this story comes to a close.